Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys joining me for today's video. We're going to be talking about what I consider the best lure to catch big pre-spawn bass on. Anytime the water temperatures in the 50s in the springtime, usually between like February and early April, and depending on what part of the country you're in. But guys, I got one lure that I have caught more big ones throughout the last 40 years than any other lure combined that time of year. So I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to fish it in today's video. I'm also going to, guys, before we get started, a couple quick housekeeping tips that you guys have to put up with every day here. Just wanted to invite you to check out my Solar Bat Signature Series glasses that are up on the website right now. You can get them at 30% off. If you guys would like to get a pair through Solar Bat, I'll put the link in the description. You guys can order them from. This is the RB2s right here. And also, please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns that I built for Fish the Moment. These are great resources to learn more about your favorite lake and get some good fishing spots on your favorite lake. I'll put the lake map breakdown link in the description there too if you guys like to check that out, so appreciate that. Okay, pre-spawn, guys, is the best time to catch big ones. It's like out of all year long, there's more bass over 4 pounds that start to move up into shallower water during the pre-spawn when the water temperature's in the 50s than any other time of year. It's like, you know, those fish, those big females are wanting to move up, get ready to spawn. And on top of them moving shallower, what happens is they not only move shallower, and when I'm talking about shallow, I don't mean like super shallow, but less than 10 foot of water, and they feed up. They're aggressively, actively feeding, trying to get, you know, their energy reserves build up for the rigors of spawning. So it's the best time to fish by far to catch a big fish. If you gave me one situation, say, Randy, what is the perfect time of year to catch a big one? Give me water temperatures of about 55 degrees, like sometime in the month of March, where, you know, those fish are going to be up and feeding and big, you know, fat, big fish. So anyway, the lure that I'm talking about here, I want to talk about and give you guys some tips and advice, is a big giant spinnerbait. This is you want to use a 3/4 to 1 ounce head with a number 7 or number 8 willow leaf. And normally I like another smaller willow leaf in front of it, like a number 3 here. So this particular setup, it's a number 7 here, number 3 here, 3/4 ounce head with a large profile wire on the thing, because the longer the wire on it, the bigger the profile the bait has. And then also, I'll put a big trailer on it. Now, most of the time I do not use trailers on my spinner baits. The only time I do is in the pre-spawn. And my favorite trailer in the pre-spawn, guys, with my spinnerbait is a Zoom trick worm. I normally like the white color. Sometimes I'll use chartreuse if the water's a little bit more stained, but I prefer white because most of the time I'm using some type of a shaddy type spinnerbait. This is a white chartreuse and blue here, which is good, but a lot of times I'll just use a pearl or white. Depends on, you know, the light intensity and the water visibility. But a full-size trick worm this is my big bass rig right here, guys. Now look at that thing. It makes the bait, you know, almost, you know, probably close to 8 inches long, 7 or 8 inches long. And this trick worm, guys, there's something about it. It gives it some really good action in the water. And I'll put my Tackle Warehouse spinnerbait link in the description if you guys want to order some. Probably what you'll have to do on that, guys, is also put my Hildebrandt blade link in the description, because a lot of these spinner baits from the factory, you can't get them big like this. You can't get them like in a number 7 or number 8. So I'll link that blade links differently in the description if you guys want to pick up some number 7 or number 8 willow leaves. And I do prefer the Hildebrandt here. They work really good. And I use gold most all the time. Usually a silver in front, a gold in the back. And again, colors just depend. But guys, that is the setup right there. Big, giant profile spinnerbait. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about, you know, how you want to fish it, where you want to fish it, which is critical. Now, one of the things that I want to tell you guys right off the bat about throwing a big spinnerbait in the pre-spawn is I use a flipping stick to throw it with. A flipping stick is probably the best thing to throw it with. This is the Megabass Alkalies. The reason I use a flipping stick is a couple different reasons. Number one is when a fish, like a big fish, like a 7-pound bass, comes up and bites this thing. They come up and they go bam, and they got the whole thing in their mouth like that. Look at all the junk in the way of the hook right there. You've got your trailer, you've got a big blade, you got the wire, all this stuff could impede the hook set. And when you got a big, powerful flipping stick like that and you get a bite, you can actually penetrate that hook a lot better with the force and the power of the flipping stick. Number two, you can pitch it. I take these spinner baits a lot of times, guys, and I'll just flip them and pitch them in and around tight objects like next to lay down trees and stuff. You can make a long cast with it, a longer cast since the rod's longer. Use heavier line on it, and you can take up a lot of slack on the hook set. So a lot of guys don't fish a spinner bait on a flipping stick, but guys, when I'm fishing the big pre-spawn spinner baits, I don't use the flipping stick with all my spinner baits, but the big giant spinner baits like this, I use with the flipping stick. And I usually use it on 20 to 25 pound test Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon line. Probably I'll use 25 if I'm fishing shallow, like if the fish are in less than 4 or 5 feet of water. But if I'm slow rolling it down a steeper bank, I may go down to 20 with that. And as far as the heads go, I use both 3/4 and 1 ounce. I probably use 3/4 a lot more than 1 ounce. The only time I use 1 ounce is like if it's really windy or if I'm fishing deeper than normal. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about where you want to fish this. I don't want to talk a lot about grass lakes because a lot of people don't have grass where they fish, but I will say one thing. In the pre-spawn, when the water's in the 50s, guys, you can catch some toads slow rolling a big spinnerbait over deeper grass. Like if you guys have lakes that have deeper hydrilla or milfoil, it can be a really good way to catch them. But I want to talk specifically about how to catch these big pre-spawners on typical man-made impoundments that just have rock and wood on it. Now, what you have to think about here is more vertical structures. I don't mean like vertical, but steeper banks is going to be your key on this. Now, most of the time, these steeper banks, I like them to be positioned either in some type of major creek arm or a big cove, because that's where those fish stage at when they start to move up to spawn. What happens, this is just a sort of a generic overview, is you'll have all these bass that are roaming out in open water all year long that the guys are spotlighting. Those fish, every year, they start to move shallower to get ready to spawn out of the middle of the lake and wherever they're at. And the first place they go to is they'll swim into those coves and creek arms, and they like to set up on the steepest banks in those areas. So any type of a channel bank that has like a 45 or 60 degree angle slope to it that has some deep water off it, perfect scenario for it. Bluff banks can be really good too. And they're even better if they're in closer proximity to a flatter spawning cove. So let me give you guys like what would be a perfect example of a good place to fish a spinnerbait at, the big spinnerbait, is if you were in a major creek arm. And let's say, for example, there's a bluff that's going down one side of the creek arm, and at the end of that bluff, it starts to gradually turn into maybe chunk rock. It transitions into a flatter bank, and then it goes into a cove, a flat cove, where those fish spawn. Those fish will set up and they'll position on those steeper channel banks and bluffs, and they'll just hang out there and feed and look for crawdads and gizzard shad, whatever, until that water temperature starts to get into the lower 60s, and they'll start moving back into those coves to spawn. So what I like to do is I like to get out on those steeper banks closer to the spawning areas, and you don't have to have cover on the bank. You can do this just on rocky banks, on gravelly banks, on clay banks, whatever. You don't need any cover. Just get out there, throw that spinnerbait out there to the bank, let it hit the bottom, and just slow crank it like that. Slow crank it right off the bottom. You don't have to put any action on it. But the thing you want to do is after you crank it, probably 4 or 5 times, let it flutter back down to the bottom and start cranking it again. But what you're wanting to do in the pre-spawn is you want to keep that spinnerbait. It's coming down like this. You're coming along the bottom, you're slow rolling it like that, and as you slow roll it, it's going to start to rise a little bit, but always drop it back down and try to keep it, probably a foot or so off the bottom. That's going to be the best way to catch those big ones. Those big ones are not going to come up high in the water column and grab this thing. They're going to be down on the bottom, and I like to keep it, about a foot off the bottom. So try to picture that in your mind based upon the slope of your bank. And that's why I like to always drop it back to the bottom so I know where the bottom's at, and then I can start it up again until I feel that it's a foot or so off the bottom. But guys, I have caught, out of all the bass I've caught in my life, I've probably caught more 7-pound bass on a big spinnerbait in the pre-spawn, slow rolling it, just on those type of banks that I talked about than any other type of lure out there. Now, this works really good when the water's in the mid 50s. One thing you will find is those water temperatures start to get a little bit warmer, like close to 60 degrees. Sometimes those fish will start hanging around wood a little bit more, like around stumps or logs or lay down trees. But I really like to focus on rock for the most part. So another thing about it is try to pick your day that you go fishing. If you get a day in the pre-spawn when your air temperatures are like normal or maybe a little bit above normal, and you have a windy, cloudy day, guys, get to the lake. Because I can tell you right now, if you go to the lake when the water temperature is 55 degrees and you got a 15 or 20 mile an hour south wind and the air temperatures are normal or warmer and it's overcast or maybe even raining, something like that, ideal situation for you will catch some big fish. That is like the perfect big fish scenario, to do that in. And as far as slow rolling it, guys, as far as the water visibilities, I prefer like 2 to 4 foot. 2 to 4 foot is the ideal situation for that. If the water clarity is closer to 4 feet, you definitely need those clouds. That'll help out. If it's dirtier, like 1.5 foot or 2 foot of visibility, sometimes the clouds aren't quite that important. But get you set up, guys. You probably, like I said, you probably have to make some. Here's what I would suggest, guys. Just go to that Tackle Warehouse link I got. Pick you out some 3/4 ounce spinner baits. Don't worry about the blade on it. Go to that Hildebrandt link I put in the description. Order you a pack of number 7 and number 8 gold Hildebrandt blades and replace the back blade with a big blade, because most of the time out of the factory, you're not going to be able to get them much over like a number 6 size. So there it is, guys. We'll get you a big bite. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.